Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down Season 3, Episode 6 is here, and it's packed with Easter eggs and callbacks to the comics. Throughout this video, we're going to be going through everything you need to know, including the main points that it pulls from. That is issue 59, which sets up one of my favourite characters in the series. Like last season, we actually interviewed co-showrunner Simon Rasiopa, and one of the last things I said to him was how I'm excited to see Powerplex. And I hope to see Powerplex. Powerplex is my number one. So
is he great?
Please. Yeah, I love Powerplex. I love that story with him. Brilliant. I always thought he was an incredible example of how revenge often leads to the destruction of yourself and those around you. In the end, you often realise the only person you destroyed was yourself, which I think Powerplex exemplifies. Voiced by Aaron Paul, the series tells a really personal story that sort of feels like it builds up the thematic points with Tether Tyrant and Megalomaniac. Beyond that, we also get ties to 51, 53, 56, 58, and at long last, the secret origin of Splode. That goes down in Invincible 25, so yeah, lots to talk about. Now jumping to issue 59, most of the scenes that we get with Powerplex come from that entry. However, they alter things at the beginning and push beyond what happens in the comics. There, we never see Jessica's death, and she also doesn't have a kid. Scott also wasn't there when she died in Chicago. Going back to episode 8 of season 1 though, they actually had the pair pop up during the fight. You could see it as them just reusing character models from the past, but Invincible's obviously already been planned out massively. So yeah, I feel like they had it planned out all the way back then, and even having read the comics several times, I didn't pay attention to these two. They play off the detail perfectly though, and we open with Scott and Jessica looking at Gretchen playing with birds and how carefree that she is. It's a big juxtaposition over what's to come, and it kinda highlights how chaotic life is. Like, as I'm recording this, there's an asteroid hurtling towards Earth that I think NASA said's got like a 2.7% chance of hitting us, but we're all just here chilling, hitting the thumbs up, watching Invincible, and blissfully unaware of what's going on. You could be rocked by an alien at any point. This video is being brought to you by CyberGhost VPN. So throughout this episode, we meet lots of different marks from a lot of different worlds. Different worlds and locations with lots of different streaming services that all have their own content and shows. Did you know that if you log onto streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus and more in other countries, that you get access to completely different content libraries? Some are even blocked in certain areas due to licensing. However, CyberGhost VPN allows you to access content from anywhere in the world right from the comfort of your home. All you have to do is click a different location and you're all ready to go. Beyond that though, CyberGhost also protects you on public networks. Data breaches and malware infections are sometimes just one click away. This could steal your data and login info, but CyberGhost stops that. With CyberGhost VPN, you can finally put your mind at ease and shield your identity. Once enabled from the app, CyberGhost transmits your data through a secure encrypted tunnel, giving you a high level of online anonymity and military-grade security. This ensures complete privacy. No one, not hackers, not your ISP, not even CyberGhost itself can see what you do online. CyberGhost also allows you to install it on up to 7 devices from just one subscription, which is perfect for sharing with friends and family. CyberGhost VPN service ticks virtually every single box you can imagine, and it's compatible with most operating systems. This includes Windows, Mac OS, Linux, iOS and Android. CyberGhost has over 38 million users and an excellent rating at Trustpilot. Reviewed by over 20,000 users, it's a VPN you can trust. It's also great value as well. If you click my link in the description, you'll get it at a price of just $2.03 per month, plus 4 months free. It's simply one of the best VPN service providers that helps you and your data stay protected. Click on the link in the description to get this amazing offer that's available only to my subscribers. Thank you. Scott also explains in the book that Jessica was a college student who was working in that building to pay for school. He talked to her on the phone the day before, but wasn't there to experience the cataclysm like what we get here. So I love how the show just kind of fleshes that all out. Scott not only thinks Invincible's responsible, but he also thinks he's working with Omni Man. It's just great getting to experience things at ground zero, and through his eyes we witness the horror firsthand. It's very Batman vs Superman-y, and it sets up a rivalry between the two. Another detail that you might have picked up is that we also see the same building collapsing that we saw in episode 8. That again comes full circle at the end, and we'll talk about that later in the video. It is just such a creative way to take things though, and it adds an even further personal rivalry between the pair. That's shared with where the character works as well. In the comics, though he works at the Pentagon, it explicitly states that he's on the upper levels away from the GDA. Here though, he's a member of the organization instead of just working in the same building. This though, it brings things in closer, and it also shows the moral quandary that comes with the organization. Just in the same way that Mark had his reservations about working with the villains they were using, Scott has his reservations too. Another difference is that the discs are also different in the show. The comic explains the discs as biotherm discs that are designed to trap your body heat and channel it back into your body. The discs don't create electricity, and the comics just help him to absorb it. In the show though, Scott already has the power to manipulate energy right from the off. We see this when he demonstrates his powers to Gretchen, but that's all brand new, and I do wonder what path Scott might have gone on had Omni-Man not destroyed his life. And Mark as well. Again though, in the comics, the discs just help him to channel energy, so it's sort of an evolution beyond the page. Scott even brings up a petition to his boss, and we hear it has 2,000 signatures. So there's a lot of people that hate Mark. Scott also goes into his backstory, which is a brand new addition for the series. His sister raised him, and she was gonna raise Gretchen, but her life was cut short unfairly by others. To Scott, he just sees Invincible as an alien threat here to destroy us, and yeah, another Batman v Superman-y thing for the character. What we can tell though is that Scott's unable to move on from the event. We catch him constantly replaying that train scene, and like, yeah, me too mate, watched it like 50 times because it's a banger. Nah, but he can't move on and is just hyper fixated on his revenge. The GDA clearly have their worries too, and from what we can see, they're leveling up their tech to try and stand up against the Viltrumites. That's obviously against Anissa at this moment, but whether that includes Oliver and Mark as well, we're gonna have to see. However, at lunch he rightly brings up the hypocrisy that often exists within companies and the government when it comes to the handling of money. I remember I worked at one place that was paying a company $9 grand a month to run the social media for us, and I was doing it anyway because they had no idea what they were doing. I asked for a pay rise for $1 grand extra a year, and they were like, "No, you can't have it, you shit, we don't want you." So I said I'm off to make mediocre YouTube videos. And who's laughing now? Anyway, Scott sees his department being penalized for the littlest mistakes, whereas Invincible's allowed to just smash the Pentagon like the subscribe button. Here the agent also says that Mark's the most powerful weapon they have against the Viltrumites. For now, mentioning until 2A grows up, 2A is the codename of Ollie. This is news for the series though, but it highlights that Cecil indeed still has Oliver as part of his plans. And Mark of course told him to stay away from him, so we could be building towards something there. Now after this we jump to Mark and Eve training Oliver. We have a Burger Mart, which is where Mark used to work at, so it's a nice bit of symbolism to have Oliver working his powers here. Duking it out against Elephant, this is a slight change up for the show. Though Mark fought him in the comics and show, they've created this brand new scene to put Ollie through his paces. They also have Elephant as a herbivore who berates the customers for eating meat. This is new for the show, and elephants are herbivores, so I like that they tied his personality to his costume, because in the comics he's obviously just a play on the Rhino from Spider-Man. No prizes for getting that though, mate. Yeah, give me back your Nerd Library VIP card. Going back to the roof and eating burgers though, we hear Oliver's frustrated about being made to train. Now what they've done with Oliver's lines here are sort of pulled together two separate conversations from the comics. Neither involved Eve though, but they're clearly trying to make her more entwined with Oliver's growth. That's something that was really missing from the source material, but it makes sense to just have her be there for all these little moments. Like the breakfast she had with the family. That wasn't in the comics, but it adds more to include her. They're actually doing a number of things differently, which may be showcasing how the show's pushing her. This is also reflected in her worries at the diner later, and I just kind of want to talk about what they're doing differently there. So in order to do that, we have to kind of go back to the Adam Eve special that's almost exactly the same as the two issues from the book. However, it didn't include the line about her being a living science machine. While it does show that she has an inherent knowledge of science and physics, that specific line's not included. The part of Brandywine telling Eve her mental blocks does happen in the special, but the idea of giving her something to prevent her from being omnipotent relates well to why they excluded that previous line. The small change could be why they have Eve taking classes in the show. That's a way to have her not just be perfect at everything and work to develop her powers instead of just being able to do everything with them from the off. I think this perfectly parallels our previous analysis of episode 4 with Rex and Shrinking Ray. There they were trying to have normal lives, but it's not possible for these heroes. Eve in the comics and in the show has really only ever been a superhero, and the classes seem like a way to have that same theme apply to Eve as well. Someone who doesn't have that normalcy even though he was skateboarding is Oliver, and he's forever just going to be this alien superhero. So I feel like it's all kind of tying together, and I just thought I'd divert and go down that route for a bit to kind of explain where they could be heading with things. Now the comments about his memories come from Invincible 53. We mentioned in our prior breakdowns how he can remember absolutely everything about his life, and that conversation finally comes here. Because of his species' short lifespan, they have to be able to learn and memorize things quickly. Thus they evolved to have amazing recall and adaptability, which is something Oliver also possesses. We also have him talking about how in his eyes his father was a hero. He only saw him leading and pushing his species to prosperity and saving them when they were attacked. So it has altered his perception of him, and I feel like it's a conversation about how things in the present that we see as good can often be built off bad things happening in the past. Either way, that happens in issue 51 after he gets his costume from Ott. Now from here we jump back to issue 59, namely the moment where Scott practices his invincible speech to his wife. We can tell he's gone through it a lot, as she says it was much better this time. He also has a map of sightings of the character, and in the bottom right you might notice one that says elf with a question mark, so I'm guessing this is the elephant fight we just witnessed. In the comics it's also never shown that the discs are actually embedded into his skin. They're just part of his suit, whereas here he has them placed into his body. They also don't have the moment where his wife hits him and he fires back a bolt that just misses her. It really highlights how he's unable to control his rage and therefore his power. This leads to his family's death, so the near miss is a great bit of foreshadowing. In the comics, the pair's son's also slightly older as well. Though he's still a kid, he's certainly not the baby that the pair have here. Scott though, he's willing to put this all on the line, starting with himself. Leaping off a building without even knowing if he can take it, it highlights how far he's willing to go to get his revenge. What I love is that it thematically plays into the entire character's persona. In order to charge his powers, he has to be hurt. So pain is driving him in more ways than one. Anyway, this sort of training montage scene is brand new for the show, as in the comics he already had his powers. Anyway, from here we jump to Oliver, Mark and Eve at a dinner with Paul and Debbie. This is completely new for the series, and our researcher TJ actually went and counted up all the times he appears in the comics. That was 7 in total, so yeah, they're adding a lot with the character. I shout out to TJ every week as he's been a lifesaver when it comes to getting these videos out so quickly, and he's a comic expert who gets the images from every issue. Also knows what he's talking about with Invincible, can bounce any theories off him, he gives me theories as well, so yeah, give the guy a follow on Twitter as I know it's going to mean the world to him. Anyway, they also add an extra edge to Paul in the show that isn't present in the comics. They paint him out as being slightly sus, and they might take things to a different place with him. I also feel like they could use it to build off what happens with Amber as well. They sort of laid the groundwork for that with Kyle, and it could be a way to enforce the domestic danger that exists within those around Mark. Could just be that Paul's nervous about the situation though, as he does pour his heart out to Debbie, but yeah, something might be wrong. We'll have to be theory time. Just kill him, Mark, kill him, everyone's against you. Either way, meeting Amber's boyfriend Kyle happens in a brand new scene going down at William's birthday. Seance Dog t-shirt. In the comics, Amber's boyfriend doesn't really come into play until Invincible 56, which is when Mark confronts him in his costume. I think it might add some spoilers into that if we discuss it further, but if you know, then you'll kind of see what I'm alluding to with what they could do with Paul. They do seem to be getting on well though, so yeah, they might even skip that arc. Now in the comics, Mark doesn't leave Powerplex for the other heroes. He still intends these kind of showdowns, but with Powerplex, he doesn't really get involved at first. The books kind of paint out how he's now becoming more established and moving up in the ranks in terms of threats. For example, you know, Anissa going into space for the Sequids, they're kind of what he's facing at this point in the books. So Powerplex is just seen as being so low level that it's not even worth bothering with. Mark just kind of swats him away. Here though, Powerplex really rattles off, you know, he makes a mess downtown, but what's ironic is that he's destroying the same city that Mark did as well. So he's becoming the thing he's trying to destroy, all while preaching he's different. He also rattles off the title several times, and it was only on this episode I realised the constant glitching with it is because there's lots of different versions of Mark in the multiverse. We figured it out. It just took 6 hours, but we did it. Now in the comics, when Powerplex first attacks, he also doesn't give a big speech to the press. Shapesmith just shows up immediately and punches him a few times before Powerplex flies off. I love how people here just continue to ignore him, and we even have a guy checking hijacking his watch. It makes it even more frustrating because Shapesmith also changes into Mark. All Powerplex wants is the real Invincible though, but in doing that, he unfortunately pulls other people into it. Kind of reminds me of like when you have an argument on Twitter and then 50 people, they all get involved and it's like, I wasn't even talking to you, but now I have to argue with all of you as well. It's always bound to happen though, because Invincible has friends and allies who will also protect the city as well. Now the scenes we see here are also mainly going down in issue 59. However, they do add in the memorial scene for the victims. It's akin to things we've seen before in comic book movies like Batman v Superman. Well, it's shown more in Justice League, but also like things like the memorial for the snap in Avengers Endgame. It's very along those lines, and I'm guessing the names here are people who've worked on the show, but there's like 80 names there, mate, and I'm not googling them all. Either way, Scott hijacking it is completely absent from the comics as well, and it really helps to add drive to Scott's motives. It just works nicely as a reminder of those that died here, and that's what's really pushing him. Like, I love him just rattling off the names, and it's clear he really cares about this. Obviously though. Now another big difference is that in the comics, Powerplex never fights Eve and he never gets captured. Initially he just attacks the teen team after his encounter with Shapesmith and then flies away when Invincible doesn't show. So here they have stuff far more intertwined with the fact Invincible doesn't show there, which angers him even more. It makes him annoyed that the person who destroyed his life doesn't even acknowledge him, and while he's been obsessing over him, Mark seemingly doesn't care. I love how he escapes as well, and just the bumps in the road are something he can use to channel his abilities. Now on a happier note, Monster Girl gets the belt that's gonna stop her reverse aging. In case you don't know, the character gets younger every time she activates her powers. This is all explained in Invincible 58, and Rudy's basically figured out a way to stop this. As Rudy says in the work, becoming the monster basically destroys some of her cells. When she reverts back to being human, it then attempts to rebuild her. However, in doing so, it's unable to fully do this due to the destroyed cells. Thus it stops growth and ends up reversing her age. Hope that makes sense, it's comic book science. Anyway, the belt saves a digital copy of the cells, and thus it can fully replicate her. The scene is pretty much the same as 58 though, and it builds a deeper connection between the two. Like, Rudy saved her life and she'll love him forever. Or at least like a handful of centuries, which, comic book readers, you might know. Now speaking of building a connection, we also see that with Rex and Ray. As with all their prior scenes, these are brand new for the show due to the comic character being dead at this point. Though she survived in the series, that fear of death still worries her greatly. She talks about how she could still get eaten by some lizard guy down the line, and I think it would be hilarious if they did it all again. What it does though is give us a reason to really peer into Rex's past, and we touch upon his backstory. That's told to us in the comic at long last, the secret origin of Rex Splode, which appears in the back of issue 25. So it's super early in the comics, but I'm glad they held it off. Rex has talked to Ray about it before in the season, and there he alluded to his parents. His origin is pretty depressing though, and it's basically what he says, just laid out as its own story. We see his parents selling him, and this was to the previous GDI director, who is the guy we met in episode 2 of the season. His family were on the brink of poverty and sold him to the government to get a better life for themselves. A line that always stuck with me from the comics is when he returns to see his family celebrating Christmas without him. There's a little box to the reader about how we shouldn't be as harsh on him when he's a jerk. And I won't be, Rex, I'll always be nice. It was such a great way to show some complexity to the character though, and make him seem a bit more sympathetic. Which I really liked, though I do wish they'd shown us the comic story in animated form. But we might still get it one day. I think the inclusion of that story here though, it's supposed to show how everyone's dealt with hard things, but it doesn't mean they get to go and be a supervillain. Mark of course had that opportunity several times, but he's always stayed in the light. Others would falter and be tempted by it, which we of course see in Scott, and also at the end with all the multiple Marks. I will talk about that later, but for now, let's just focus on things here. That again takes us back to Invincible 59, where we see Powerplex talking to his wife. Once more, he's plotting to finally get Invincible's attention, and though the comic painted out as Scott's idea, the show implies it was his wife's. They also give an additional scene to Donald and Mark that humanizes Scott to him a lot. In the comic, Mark doesn't learn about Jessica or his powers until his first proper meeting with the character, so it expands out the story, and then we get the rest of Invincible 59. However, the surroundings are vastly altered. In the comics, the two fight in an abandoned government weapons facility and not at Jessica's house. This is where his family died, so it just adds a great full circle moment. Powerplex was created in that moment, and arguably he's going to be made into something worse at the exact same location. His family died here twice, and I'd love to return to this location down the line. Mark also doesn't really give a speech to Powerplex in the comic, and instead he just says he's sorry. That of course ties into the episode title though, which is all I can say is sorry. Beyond that though, the majority of the fight is the same, including his wife spitting on Invincible. They perfectly recreate the shot of Powerplex electrocuting Mark as well, with it feeling like it's ripped right off the pages. Unfortunately though, this ends up leading to the death of Scott's family. It's a harrowing moment in both the book and show, and it was always something that stuck with me long after I put down the comics. So back when I was saying how I can't wait to see Powerplex brought across, it was because of how much of a gut punch this felt. It's rare that you can feel anger for a villain, but also sorrow for what they've gone through at the same time. And I think that's the beauty of Powerplex's arc and why it's so devastating. This then leads into the scene at the prison, and although the books have a similar sort of setup, they expanded a lot here. The source material encounter is much briefer, as Powerplex is just completely blunt about it. There he tells him to shut up straight away and tells him right off the bat why he agreed to talk to him. He purely just wanted him there to tell him that he's gonna kill him, which Mark can't even really respond to. Guy is just so fixated on revenge, he can't even see that this is what cost him his family. I love the addition here though that there's no going back. They can't remove the discs without killing him, and it's so good. Also, this prison, or at least the thing holding him, that gets repurposed down the line, which will spoil it if we talk about it, but I'd be remiss for not pointing it out, and you will see this again, so keep an eye on it. Now we then get the orb watching Mark and Eve, which is a combination of Invincible 51 and 58. I think I mentioned it in our earlier breakdowns how the book just kind of teased out the orbs watching them. We didn't know it was Levy for a long time, and then we got the eventual reveal. They've sort of done it backwards here though, where they reveal Levy along with the orbs and then have gone from it just watching them. Either way though, it leads to the same thing, which is Levy pulling together his army of Invincibles. Taken from other realities, he's about to launch an attack known as the Invincible War. I'm guessing that that's going to be what episode 7 is, and then after that, we'll see what conquests Mark is going to fight for the finale, which is what I'm guessing is going to happen, but they might do Invincible War for the next 2 episodes, but we'll see. In the comics, we get a better look at all of them though, as they put them all on one page. This includes the ones we see here, like the guy with the cloth over his face. Amongst these villainous versions, we also have one with a full head covering that kind of reminds me of the original Cyclops design. There's also a Veltromite Mark with a mustache akin to what all the males of the species have. There's also one in the Bulletproof costume, which is what Mark initially rejected, and then Art gave it to Bulletproof, but in this universe he kept it. One of my favourite designs is the black and yellow one with a cape, and that's such a cool variant. There's also a heavily burned one as well that always kind of reminded me of Agent Smith from The Matrix for some reason, and one that has a mohawk. Though you can't see them all, there's also some with capes and some without lenses. You also have a red and blue Invincible, and one whose entire face is covered. Kinda reminds me of a nondescript wall-crawling web-slinging superhero.
See you, chump.
Either way, I'm excited for you guys to see them, as some of them are absolutely crazy. It's gonna make for a big couple of episodes if that's the direction we go, and yeah, very hyped to see it. I'm also very happy with how they delivered Powerplex. This and the Future Immortal story were like the 2 big things I was really worried about them pulling off, but both improved on the comics in lots of different ways. So yeah, really good episode, and this season has continued to knock it out of the park for me. They're not only adapting some of my favourite arcs brilliantly, but they're also adding in so many extra dimensions, which is great to see, and obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please drop a like on the video, and did you know that members of the channel, you also get early access to some videos. If you click the join button, you get at least 1 breakdown a week before anyone else. It costs just 99 cents a month, and we try to set it where hopefully it's not a lot to you, but if a lot of you do it, then it will mean a lot to us. Click the link in the description and use this special discount CyberGhost VPN only for our channel users to protect your data and unblock global content. It's a 45-day money-back guarantee with 24/7 customer support, so everything's risk-free. Go check it out. If you want to get some Heavy Swallows merch, yeah, that's also at the store below, and huge thank you to everyone who's picked one up. We do loads of different new designs on that all the time, so keep an eye out. If you've been there before already, Probably got some new designs on there now, so go check them out. Now if you want some else to watch, a bit superhero-y, then check out our video on screen right now, talking Marvel stuff, so yeah, head over there right after this. With that out of the way, huge thank you for sticking through this video. I've been your host Paul, my voice is going, so I'm gonna go, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!